And if everything is well with YouTube, we should be live now here at the Frenzel piano practicing. That's at least what we're going to do. The Sonata Opus 31 number 2, basically from scratch. So I'm excited to do that with you. I see in the chat here, let me have a look. Tom is here, Turan is here, Christian Vodak, hello to you. And so while you coming in, so good to know perhaps that Anya is in the chat and she will take your questions. So I see the chat also here. That's nice. Robert is here. Great. So she will take your questions if you have some. It's very difficult for me to read the questions and practicing at the same time while formulating my thoughts and sharing them with you. So Anya is making notes of those questions that she thinks is important that or might be interesting for me to see, and she will put them on the Google document that I will see when I look at my laptop over there. So hope you enjoyed the session. The Opus 31 number 2, I've never played it. This sonata, of course, I have had some looks at it. Also on the clavichord it still works rather nice. I think it's still in 5-octave compass range, so that's interesting also. Is it 5 octaves? My guess it is. I don't know actually. I should let me check when we ask the question ourselves. Here it is still 5 octaves, I think. Yes, yes, perfect on clavichord. Well, there are some difficulties. Anyway, so someone of you asked me to have a look at this, and I'm more than happy to do so because it's a very interesting sonata. So without further ado, I would say we jump right into the piece. Greetings from Vietnam, Turan. Okay, that's a long way from Belgium. And Tom is from Mexico, so that's always also a long way from Belgium. So Authentic Sound is global now. Great. YouTube is an amazing thing. Okay, I will shut this tablet down because it distracts me. So again, hope you have a great time in the chat. I will check your chat from time to time, but we'll devote most of our time just practicing. By the way, this live stream, I should not forget to mention, is really made possible by our Patreons. I'm mentioning them rather often, but I'm really grateful to them. We are approaching the number of 90 patrons now, and if it would be possible to give you an insight or just a look at the cables and the equipment that's over here on my Irar. I'm sorry, Mr. Irar, you have to carry some modern equipment now. It wouldn't be possible without them. So if you would feel inspired to have a look on the Patreon page, I would, of course, appreciate that a lot. And now, without further ado, let's jump into the Beethoven Sonata, Opus 31, number 2. Okay, there we go. I'll add some more microphones, the Neumann microphones, so my main microphones are over there. This is a microphone that's for my voice, and if you notice some things with sound, this microphone I need for my voice, otherwise you would hear my voice from a very far distance. But it can mess up the sound of the piano sometimes. On the clavichord it's for sure a problem. So I'm not sure how to fix that, but I'm thinking about it. So anyway, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is here. That's great. Antoine is here. Would need you, Antoine, to tune the piano. It's difficult to tune. So if you come over to Belgium, you're my guest. Antoine is he is an expert in pianos and also Irar pianos. Karel Ledesma. Third movement will come. We'll just focus on the first movement. The third movement is really interesting also. A piece regarding tempo. We're not going to discuss too much of tempo. Yeah, tempo is always an issue with me and think with any one of us. But we'll see how to find a balance in this piece just from within the movement itself. And we might check too some metronome numbers because it's fun to do, isn't it? No idea for name. Thank you for being here. Just saying hello to you in the chat. KMG24. Nice to see you here again. Red Shambhala. That's a new name, I think. Here, don't play so fast. I'm do my best. Basileos is here from Athens in Greece. Great, and Brian Barajas. Oh, all those names, I mispronounce them, but that's the thing. Okay, there we go. So I just played the sonata a few times, and there is someone coming to the door asking something wrong.
My computer is not starting. So.
Anya's computer is not starting, so yeah. So as soon as her computer starts, she will be in the chat, I assume. Okay, there we go. So I've played this movement a few times. It's not a really difficult sonata. Certainly the first movement, the second movement is a rather difficult adagio. And then the third movement has some tricky jumps in the left hand. It's a beautiful piece. And so I was thinking whether I should play it first or just go into detail in some passages. And I think we just jump into the details. I think that's the best we can do. So it starts with this arpeggio. We leave it for now, and we start immediately at the allegro, which sounds like this. So if you have the score, it's interesting to follow perhaps, and you can easily find this on IMSLP. I'm playing here from the Schenker edition, which is a good edition, has some terrible fingering sometimes. And it's not too bad actually, but it's overkill with fingering sometimes. Like for instance here, you have 4, 3, 4, 3, 3, 2, 3, 1. I don't understand why not just making 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, giving you the same articulation. So I hope the sound is okay, but because Anya's not checking this now, if there is something wrong with the sound, I will have a look on the chat there. Then let me know. So what's interesting here is that Beethoven gives all these slurs on these notes, and that's something really. It doesn't do that often. Of course, he makes bows and he makes slurs, but to have these 2 eighth notes as a couple. In German, they would say a Seufzer and a Suspiratio, actually. It's a kind of... And it's something that puzzled me, because if you play the piece with... If you would imagine that Beethoven would not have added those slurs, you would have something like... So you would have normal upbeat, but here he adds all these slurs, actually implementing by doing that, giving an accent on the first 8th note every time. So it's adding a little bit of inégalité even. So adding also kind of uneasiness. I don't know in English what the exact translation would be. Some the opposite of feeling calm. So kind of unruhig, like the Germans would say. But this conflicts sometimes with the normal feeling of upbeat, like where he starts. Ta-dum, ta-dum, dee-dum, ta-dum, dee-dum, ta-dum. So the A already needs to have a little accent, so giving this upbeat a little bit of heaviness. And I'm saying all of this, more words than playing now, because this all has to be molded into a unity. So the question is, how short do you make them? How much accentuated do you make them? And that's an interesting question to think about. If you go to the second line, So here also you have these slurs, and here if he goes to this really dramatic F, you would play regardless of tempo that you choose. It's so you would more have 3/8 notes and then and so but he's especially not indicating that. It indicates and it holds your movement back so much. Again, regardless of tempo. So it adds a lot of articulation, a lot of accentuation, and a lot of drama is of this emotion actually of this piece is to be found within this balance between articulation and accentuation. And we will come back to that because that's a very significant part of this sonata, giving this Unruhe. What's that in English? This not being calm, so this unease, so to say. And then there is another aspect that we have to reflect on that. I was thinking about this. This is sonata in a time where tempo rubato became what it is today. So we have talked about tempo rubato in the past, of this left hand, like in Chopin still. But in Beethoven, also in Mozart, you have this, it's the imitation of the opera, bel canto, so to say. So we have these long lines of notes, but the left hand kind of keeps his tempo steady. Slowly this shifts to a kind of manipulation of the tempo itself, where, for instance, Carl Czerny describes this really nice in his pianoforte school. He says you have different kinds of tempo rubato. One of them, probably the most used, is that you have your basic tempo, you go a little bit over the line and then you come back. You can do it, of course, in different degrees. I would say never exaggerate with this, because a composer can indicate accelerando or but in Beethoven's time, in this time, you will not see it so often. These accelerando and ritardando perhaps a little bit more, but in general, it's something that it's not indicated very often. I was looking in a score, an edition that I have from von Bülow, it's not made by von Bülow, it's in the same series, where they especially indicate this in these passages a little bit of accelerando and decrescendo, so actually giving indicating what Carl Czerny is describing as a kind of tempo rubato. Again, I would not do it too much, but it gives a great effect, like for instance this. A little bit faster. Ta 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 ta. So a little bit of accelerando and then coming back, but just a little bit has often a very powerful effect. And most of the times, if you do it in a way that people are not aware of it, it's the most powerful version. I mean, you feel this anxiety building and then this relief again. And so if people talk about tempo and whether you have to play the piece fast or slow, that's a very difficult discussion to have, because all these elements we're talking about are implemented in such a piece. You cannot just simply say, I put my metronome on number X and then just... it's not possible. I can give 50 variations on the same sentence here with a different expression in one tempo. And again, you can do it fast or slow, whatever you want. But all of these elements need to come together. And then sometimes you have something that say, okay, this makes sense. This has a kind of emotional story behind it. So let me just try this again from the second line here. And maybe a little bit more attention to the left hand, where Beethoven write accentuation notes. So it's actually not accentuated, but very short staccato. It's still in quarter note, but the strich, or it's not a dot, but it's a line. We actually don't know if it makes a difference for Beethoven, but in any way it's staccato. Maybe a little bit, even a little bit of accentuation added to that, but it builds, of course, this tension. Let's try that. So here you have this building of tension again. I'm using a little bit of pedal. Czerny indicates pedal in the fortissimo with 40 passages. Beethoven doesn't. So let's try both versions. But here you have this building of the... and again, I'm practicing here. If you jump into this live stream later, it's not a piece that I have in my repertoire. I'm just discovering things together with you live, actually. So I have the building of the chord. And it goes to the E. So it's a kind of bridge, but also here. Sequence. Increasing the tempo a little bit. So I I don't know how much I should give for it. Perhaps just staying in the same movement might work as well. But and that's a matter of playing this piece long enough to feel exactly where you go and where you should end. That's not something you can do just on the spot. Finding this balance. And then certainly I would say come back to the movement here. Jenny writes lebhaft und leicht aber klagend, which is lively, light, but klagend. What's that in English? I can't find the word now. It's not feeling sorry, it's complain, that's the word. So again, Beethoven indicates these. He wants to have this strong accentuation, I think. That's, if I would practice this, that would be an immediate tempo indication for me. If it's got time, so he clearly wants you to have a strong accentuation pattern, I would say, regarding the time signature on 1 and 3, more than if you would have just used common time. That you would have more 1, 2, 3, 4. But his indication of these bows conflict a little bit with that. So he doesn't want you to play too much on 1 and 3, and giving still emphasis on this 2 and 4. So this feels a little bit, this piece, as a kind of alla breve, but a very heavy one. And regarding the triplets, certainly one that takes the tempo a little bit down compared to the normal alla breve as I would see it in Bach's time. So alla breve, fugue of Bach, typically would be not with the normal tempo ordinary, which is second. That's actually not a discussion even on the half note, on the quarter note, but on the half note. So here you would have the same, but a little slower, I would say. And then you have this passage. So how much articulation would you like to have? Let's try just a maximum out. It's perhaps a little bit too much, but it's very different. So light means maybe the left hand not too articulated, or maybe yeah, we can try it. I like this kind of perpetuum mobile, and then the right hand very expressive. So that's of course not so easy to make sound on this piano, and certainly with tom, 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 tom. I would say this is chom, 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 pom, pom. There's a very noble ending actually, because we have had all these slurs, to these counter accents. We have this building of your cha, pa, 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 pom, 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 and then here comes suddenly cha, da, 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 da. Also here I would make groups. So holding the notes. So to bring this all together in one sound, it's very difficult. So here, this piano is sometimes works great, but sometimes you would like to add some pedal here, and that would make this so much easier. But I might do it at the end, but I don't know yet. So if Beethoven doesn't indicate it, it doesn't mean by definition, at least as I see it, that he doesn't want you to use the pedal. And certainly if you play on later pianos on this, there might be a necessity to do it, because the DNA, so to say, of a modern piano is much different than from this one. So also the error, still, even there you need more pedaling, I think, than on this piano. But to make sound here, let's check the tempo we now have with these. So that's how I actually try to come to a kind of tempo balance, and it's only then that I check with some metronome numbers that we have, because those metronome numbers that we have are nothing less and nothing more, but also nothing less than the results of the composers who lived back then. So they, of course, didn't give these tempo indications like magicians. They played these pieces and came from themselves to a certain balance, or they had memories of Beethoven's playing in Czerny's case, or Moschle's, very important. But anyway, it are numbers that reflect the outcome of what we are now going to check for what I am doing. And so that's for me the magic of this. We can shake hands almost, and it gives so much insight, so much more than speed. It gives so much insight in what they might have had in mind when playing this. So I'm around 112 for the quarter note. Maybe in the beginning a little bit slower. So let's say that's my middle tempo, 108, 112, and well, yeah, that's what Czerny has as fastest tempo, I see. So he starts with 104, 108, 112. He made actually 4 separate editions. It's unbelievable. And then he published also some metronome numbers in his piano school, the third part of that. And motionless is faster. Motionless goes to 126. So, and now comes the interesting thing, and we can try some of these tempi out, or we can say, well, that's for later. What I typically will do is say, well, I'm in the range of that, so that's okay for me. I will make a video on what it really means to play in double beat, or to have you inspired on these tempi, because it's not just sticking to exact a number, although it might be very worthwhile of your time doing that, since sticking to a certain tempo forces you to think backwards. So what we did now is just find a certain balance, and of course I'm not totally unprepared in the sense that I've tried this piece out sometimes on my clavichord, so as I have some idea of what tempo I should be looking for, but you develop a kind of skill, every one of us, regardless how you come to an end result, you develop a skill as a musician. You need to balance every element with each other, and so at the end you find a floor, some kind of foundation, which gives you the feeling that everything fits. And that foundation is your tempo or movement. And if you work just backwards, if you take just what is written in the past on this piece as a tempo, as an end result, and you start from there, then you have to rethink all of your process to make the music work again. And that's fascinating. It's more difficult, because then you need to stick to a certain movement that perhaps is not your own, but stick as long as it takes to make this music feel balanced and to have this emotional story that's hidden behind these notes, bring that to your audience. But it's more difficult, and it requires, of course, more insight in performance practice of the time, which also for me is a daily discovery. We know so little, like accentuation is important, I believe, giving the right accents. I think that's one of the key elements of understanding historical tempi, because suddenly it's not anymore the drive of the piece that guides you through this. It's a detailed look at the notes, in fact, and it's totally different. Well, maybe not totally, but it's really different. So let's try this again, but maybe just have a check on the chat if Anya she was not able, I think, to have access to this Google Doc, so there's nothing on there. Okay, so I would suggest, if Anya is not typing in your questions on my Google Doc, which is supposed to do, Anya, if you have something to ask me, to perhaps type it again, if it doesn't bother you doing so, if you have some specific things to ask for this movement. And then I will try just 5 minutes or few minutes, and then I'll come back to you. Let's add to that the Largo, which is also kind of weird, because Beethoven adds a long arpeggio with some pedaling. There he indicates pedaling, by the way. And then a long note with an fermata, so he definitely wants you to have this chord very long. Let's see what we can make of that. It's possible to have the moderator here even. In the Largo, you typically count in 16th notes. slow down a little bit to 106. Okay. Let's look on the computer here. Yeah, phrase 14, phrasal 14. I think we mentioned that the piano is hard to tune. It is really hard to tune. Now it's a little bit more stable. That's the start. But it has so much power and upper tones, the overtone. I was playing on it rather careful not to play it too loud, and I think still that it's not meant for really symphonic playing. But this week I had a very nice session with a young pianist playing a Mozart, Haydn, and we played Beethoven symphonies for four-hand in Czerny's edition. So he made arrangement for four hands. Great arrangement, by the way. Went perfect on this piano. And so he encouraged me to do a little bit more, to get a little bit more out of the piano, and it handles it really well. I was thinking that as a result of that the tuning would be completely destroyed, but it wasn't. But still, there is very little margin if you tune a string. The clavichord, harpsichord, or the piano, it's the same. You feel that suddenly there is a kind of room that you have available, in which if you just stay in the middle, and it's hard to explain, but if you stay in the middle, there's a kind of relaxation, so to say, and you know that the piano or the instrument will keep tuning very well. Here it's stable, but that room that you have to have the tone in, to have the octaves in tune, or just the three strings in tune, is much less. And the thing is, when there is a slight impurity, it enhances everything, this piano, because of the overtones. And I don't know if it's even possible to tune this piano really perfect. That's the reason why I didn't make any official, so to say, YouTube recording, because this F is terrible now. That's really out of tune. I messed it up just before the live stream. And sometimes you play a key note and it is in tune, but not always from right at the beginning. And then you have the problem with the octaves. Then you have the problem with, of course, the temperament itself, because if you keep changing things in individual notes, your temperament is suffering. I don't mind too much, because then we go from a kind of equal to a kind of unequal temperament, which is also fine. So I'm struggling with the tuning. I have to learn that. I hope the Fritz will be easier to tune. Sarah Kraus, what does it sound like if you play the bottom two notes of the arpeggio quiet? Well, let's try. So, just without any thing, just only the pedal, it sounds like it's difficult. I mean, it produces a lot of sound in the bass. I guess you're saying you want to have a little bit of this chord with the A as a bass. I don't think I would necessarily do this, because he starts on the C sharp, and if you would give one accent, I would give it on the lowest note. So you can play it, of course, with the, what's that, Verschiebung. It's a lot of difference here. All these sounds, it's great to play on a 2-century-old piano, but it's 2 centuries old. You hear that? And you can, of course, use the moderator, which is this little piece of felt. The only thing is that you have to release it, and then the difference between playing with the moderator and without is really big. Here on this piano you have another register, and I will make a video on the piano soon, I promise. If you really depress the pedal to the bottom, you add a kind of harpsichord. Listen. And you can mix both. Making this piano, turning this piano sound into a kind of Tangentenflügel almost, but it's difficult. It's difficult to control the sound. Okay. High E and D in particular. This D is also out of tune. C sharp now as well. But I can tell the margins are really small. It's impossible to turn the tuning pins because then you are, that's not possible. So stretching a little bit, the pins like you do on a clavichord, here is also the thing to do. So stretching also the string over the bridge, because that's of course key, and the scaling is shorter. I'm not a specialist on that, but my feeling says it's possible to tune the piano, but I don't think you will arrive with such an instrument to a kind of perfect tuning that you would have with the Steinway, where every note is really pure. I don't know it's possible. As I said at the beginning, Antoine needs to come to Belgium to help me out with this. He works on Erard pianos and older pianos. We will not go to the third movement that's asked. We will do that in a separate stream. It's also an interesting piece because it's said, if I remember well, that with this third movement that Beethoven wrote this while he saw some horses with the cavalry in the city. So it would be an imitation of someone riding horses in the city. Don't know if it's true. Tempo giusto, Thomas writes. Yes, true. Tempo giusto. Tempo giusto means a tempo according to taste, but based on what's written. So it's the musician's tempo for a piece, but within the context of the notation. It's different than tempo ordinario. Tempo ordinario is the common tempo for a given time signature, for common time, and that's one of the strangest things if you see it described as a tempo, not only in theoretical books, but often in very practical treatises, and we should perhaps make a series on this. Then it's very easy to tell that 1/4 note is 1 second. That's actually what the tempo ordinario is about. That's most of the time half of what we see in metronome numbers. So yeah, but that's for another topic. That's the normal tempo for a given time signature. It's not difficult, but it's not easy either. Antonia writes something I cannot. Molto complessa. I think it's that it was nice. Okay, Thomas writing with her. Okay, Sarah, that's cool. Yeah, this is a sound box sometimes, this piano. Then Tiago asked, Wim, do you plan to play the Pathetique Sonata on the Sverti piano or the Fritz? Yes, I am. Because we then can demonstrate this long... You remember the quote of Schindler, who says you have to keep these notes as long as the sound will continue. I don't think that you can take it literally because that's very long. And Fritz will have, I think, even a longer tone. So then we can read our newspapers in between. But I will do also the middle part because that's very hard on clavichord, also very hard here. That's a very, very slow movement then. We come back to that. Helen, not directly related to this piece, but I was wondering if Wim could consider doing a video explaining temperament, as it can be quite a difficult topic to understand. We did some, Helen. If you go on my channel, go to CPE Bach, temperament, you have some playlist even on temperaments. And if you would just drop a comment later on another video, I will receive it. I can point you to that, but it's easy to find. So I tuned the clavichord there from A to Z, the complete clavichord, Z I think in English, set, we say in Dutch. If that's of your interest, also I tune it equal temperament. I think I tune it also unequal, I don't know. And then we have some topics on CPE, Bach and temperament. Yeah, so always from a practical standpoint, because I'm not someone who really can read all those diagrams with the fifths and things like that. For me, in tuning, it's how much do you want to have pure and how much keys do you want to play. But it might be a good idea to dive a little bit deeper into that. Okay, Nathan is already giving the answer. Thank you. Simon Daniel, please start the second movement to compare the two tempi. We'll do that later. The second movement is not so easy. And I frankly have never played it even. It's a movement with a lot of different note values. So it goes from whole bars to 30-second runs, which all have to fit in a certain framework. This I should prepare a little bit. Well, when will our Bach recordings be released, KMG 24? Good question. We have our project ready. I mean, the product packages ready. We have the prices for the CDs and the vinyl discs. And we need to execute the thing. It was planned for December, but it simply was not possible. A lot of organ projects came together now, as you've seen in some videos. We have the building of the studio, which takes a lot of time. We'll make some updates on that. Then this Mr. Frenzel takes a lot of time on its own, tuning, to just say something, and also learn the language of the piano. And we have to figure out, and that's the last thing, and I will come with some videos to you to make this also financially possible, because the Pachelbel disc that you see over there, it's just one disc on vinyl. The Bach partitas will be 4, so that's a really expensive project. And the CDs are more feasible and more easier to do, but it's also there we have to make decisions on what with the booklet. What we originally planned to have a book on Bach and the clavichords, an article written by Joris Potvliege. Are we going to do that? Yes, but then it needs to be, the English version needs to be corrected. We need to have the booklet layout. We need to have it printed, and it's a big project. So, but I'm not feeling very well that it hasn't been out yet, because the partitas, I spent so many years recording them. I mean, preparing them, then we record them in January, and December, January, February 2017. That's almost 2 years. We need to continue. Patricio, what edition of the score I'm using? I'm using the Schenker edition. That's just my score I'm using for decades now. If I have a Simrock edition version of this piece, which is the last edition that Czerny made, I will play from that, because there you have some very small additions compared to Beethoven's manuscript of first editions. That makes sense. Of course, you have to place everything in context, but as I understand it, is what Czerny adds is in the spirit of Beethoven. It's not too much. And he adds also his fingerings, which are in a way different than what you would expect. Certainly, if you would stick to the version of Czerny where he indicates pedaling, he adds a little bit more. Reading his pianoforte school, you could say, well, you're allowed, quote unquote. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but if you want to reflect on what could Beethoven have meant, it's not so that you use a pedal from the beginning till the end. Certainly not. And so combine that with the fingering of Czerny, and there is a kind of idea that you can imagine, but it's hard to reproduce. So if I can play from that edition, I will, but it's hard to find. It's not even on IMSLP. Which is strange, because imagine this is the last edition that Czerny made, and he was the most prominent Beethoven student he was a teacher of many of students that started with Beethoven. Beethoven just sent them to Czerny, including his nephew. So, yeah, it's strange that that edition is not reprinted, for instance. So, Les Adieux would very, we tried one in a few bars in the previous live stream here. Sarah, are you going to learn all the Beethoven Sonata? Yes. And actually we will start from next year, January. Actually we start already now. You see it in the hashtag above this video. The Beethoven project will be a long-term project where we record all sonatas to start with probably all the rest of the keyboard works. And probably in chronological order. And what I plan to do is sharing a lot of that process with you. My questions, things I have difficulties in understanding, and things like I think I understand, or just the solutions I found practicing live. Now we did just a first look, and we might just continue working on this. I might be practicing, just maybe recording together with you, maybe just record the session and upload it as I did with the Bach G-sharp minor recently, which I was pleasantly surprised you like that long session so much, because it's one of the best performing videos right now. I thought this was really something that was very boring actually to watch, but some of you asked to do such sessions where I in detail go through even making my fingering, but you appreciated that a lot, so I will continue making this. The live streams will be more interactive, as we are doing now. I'm reading your chats, I'm not playing. Of course, if I record the piece, I'm only playing and a little bit of talking. So there are two different formats. And with the studio, that would, I could produce literally full days if I'm at home. So that would be great. So yes, all of Beethoven, that's the piano for. Anya says this week we are going to make the decision. Yeah, we are. And she has found the Google Doc, so I just read first the few questions she has added there. Tiago, I've seen that. Okay. I'm just checking here. Robert asks, is it my imagination, or does this performance and instruments sound more compact than a muscular modern player thundering and roaring like a hurricane on a contemporary 9-foot grand? Yes. Well, that's an interesting question. I think, yes, it is. And this was just the first impression. I mean, you cannot say that's a good performance. I'm just sharing some impressions with you and some first solutions. Tomorrow, if I wake up and I would play this piece again, it would develop and it would start to balance out. But not saying that another performance is not okay. It's just what you want and what your take on the music is. But if you take the direction of what I'm taking, so looking at those metronome numbers from a different perspective, connecting the metronome numbers more to what was used in previous times, where you had clear descriptions of Schlag, beat, and up and down, and also seeing the relationship between the notation and what I know from Bach's music that relates to this music. If you apply it, if you approach it like that, the music of Beethoven even becomes more intimate and more sensitive, I think, also. Of course, less virtuosic, although sometimes it still is very brilliant. But in a way, more chamber music, more telling, more 18th century language. So yeah, I think that's true. Jason, that's a question Anya copied. You have mentioned that in Chinese Bach inventions and symphonies, the tempi were slowed down after his death. Does the edition on IMSLP have the earlier metronome? You mean the Czerny? Yeah, I don't know. It's true for the inventions. I don't know for the symphonias. I really don't know. it might be interesting to have them published on my website. And by the way, yeah, the website, that's another project. Not talking on that here. We're going to launch, just very briefly, we're going to launch some spreadsheets, some Google spreadsheets, so that are accessible for all of you to just contribute three spreadsheets. One, the main one will be contribute metronome numbers, just as a research tool, because there is on this moment not one place where you can actually go to and have some have one document with thousands of metronome numbers that would potentially be of your interest for a particular piece, or just to make a kind of research for whatever you want to use that. So that's one thing we plan to do very soon. The spreadsheet is ready actually. Later, of course, we hope someone knocks on our door and say, hey, we can make a database of that. So that you can type in Mozart Kachelbezeichnnis 545 and you have all the metronome numbers of that piece given from the earliest metronome number until 20th century editions. So that would be interesting. Second one is to give quotes, collect quotes actually from 19th century quotes where people talk about the metronome as a tempo device that gives accurate tempi, which is, I think, important to state, because too often you hear people saying, well, it's not, those metronome numbers were not meant to be played, and it's not true, they were. And so it would be very handy if you would have an overview of, I don't know how many. And then third one is, I even forgot. But I will make a video in a few weeks. So, okay. Patricio say, I really want to hear you play Mozart's Rondo D major, best YouTube channel ever. Thank you so much. The Rondo in A minor is on my channel. That's a Rondo. The D major, it's on my list for a long time. It will be on the clavichord. It's perfect for clavichord. It's also very well possible here, but it's so well on the clavichord. This is like a Steinway then for Mozart. Okay. Nathan, are you thinking of doing any pieces of Liszt? Yeah, but not myself. I have some contacts for people who might want to do that. And again, it's a matter of time just to take an airplane. I mean, it's and meet people, because you cannot. That's the thing. You have to really talk to people and try things out, see if it matches. It's not obvious for everybody, even not if they would go into this story of reconstructing our tempo as we see it, at least, to just do it. I mean, that's a big step, I understand. So building up relationships is important. But in the long term, yes, I would love to do some Liszt. It's one of my favorite composers as well. Jason, you've mentioned, okay, that's a question I copied. Jason is working on the Sinfonia number 14, Andante con mote. I'm feeling just a bit faster, around 67-80 for the 8th note, and Czerny indicates 66 for the 8th note. Yeah, that's possible. And again, if you have 66 and you go to 67, that's definitely another tempo, but it's still in the same family of tempi. You just produce another character, you make another piece out of it. So I wouldn't bother too much. But it's interesting to stick around the exact Czerny number. But probably you have to adapt also his way of playing. So if people say, well, if I play Bach, it's not exactly Czerny's numbers, it's because I don't always copy them. I don't always follow them. For the partitas, even at the time, early 2017, I was not even looking into his numbers at all. Actually, our tempo journey started after that. So, but it's interesting to look at them. It's really interesting. And since I do look at them, I've learned a lot. I really learned a lot. I think he was aware of the 18th century practice, and he was really close to that. But, and how much he changed because he lived in another time, that's an interesting question, and we have to solve that ourselves, and we can only solve that individual. There's no general truth about this. So Simon Daniel. Um, by the way, I did research on Beethoven sonatas, but seen through editions, so starting on Czerny, Liszt, Bülow, Schnabel, and Sir Francis Tovey. I've not seen Tovey. That's interesting because isn't he the one who gave also Bach metronome numbers, which are still in the Dover edition, I think. Everyone except Tovey mentions changes. Yeah, well, if your point is that if you take the Czerny metronome numbers and we don't have one, we have sometimes five. And we have Moschles. Moschles also has 4 or 5 editions, but he kept more or less the same numbers. Then you go to Van Bülow, and you go later. Kulak, I don't know if Kulak has, I don't know. But if you put all those numbers on a row, they're not the same. But if you see here, Czerny 104, 108, 112, those are not the same either, but they are of the same category. It's not that one time he played 78 quarter note and then he jumps to quarter note 132. It's in the same range. Moschles has 126, which is faster than Czerny. So he makes a slightly different piece out of this, but still 104, 126, it's still in the same. It's not mathematics. It's an interpretation. Van Bülow, however, is matching really well with these numbers. If you go to the Waldstein, I was surprised to see the Prestissimo. So that's the last part that he gives. Czerny has whole note 80, I believe, and Van Bülow gives half note 172 or 76, very close to Czerny. So which is basically a tempo where it's beyond imagination. And I was expecting that he would explain that in these editions where you have these long texts of explanation of how to play, but not a word, not even a word on the difficulty of that. So again, to summarize, if you would say, well, all the numbers are the same, no, they're not, but they are in the same range. Of Tovey, I don't know. Never seen them. Thomas Wright, your efficiency is amazing where you're looking to save time and maximize output. Yeah, we would love to be somewhat more effective, actually. We're trying to do that. There's a lot coming together now. On Strutter, you should get into Czerny sometime. There are many great pieces that no one knows because no one bothers to play. That's true. He composed over 1,000, I believe, opus numbers. Some of those containing dozens of pieces. If you go on my channel and you type in Karl Czerny or just Czerny in the search bar, you will find 2 pieces I've recorded 2 or 3 years ago. Preludes and fugues. And then you can understand that what Liszt said once, that in Czerny we lost one of the greatest composers. And he said that because Czerny had an enormous output. He basically taught from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening, and then he started composing. And not only composing, also making all these transcriptions for symphonies and other pieces for 1 keyboard, mostly 2 keyboards sometimes. So, and he died, I believe, under the age of 60. So, yeah, it was not Mr. Nobody, I would say. Okay. I would love to play some more Czerny. We're going to play his etudes, okay? That's for sure. I think having a series in a few weeks or months, I need to prepare it very well because I want to have it as a combination package where I have 1 etude every time. And then connected to that a kind of basic introduction to tempo research, 3 or 4 videos that those videos will point you to, and then writing a basic introduction to tempo research on paper, so in a book. And we are working to make this happen now. Okay. John asked, will the Beethoven project include the works without opus numbers? Yes. I'm not totally convinced if we would record everything because, yeah, we will probably follow Czerny's list of keyboard works, also his list of sonatas. You know, Beethoven in his mind and Czerny's mind, Czerny copied that. He had only 29 sonatas. He didn't include the opus. You had two shorter ones, which are sonatinas by Czerny. Beethoven didn't like the idea to have them published as opus, as sonatas. But anyway, we'll follow that guide and then see what we can add to that. So that's the plan. Someone watching from China. That's unbelievable. And Sarah answers in Chinese, I guess. Yeah, Nathan, what days do you post live streams? Because I always somehow end up missing them. I will come to a kind of schedule for live streams. I'm not yet sure if they would be on Monday all the time or whatever. And certainly make a scheme of a schedule in advance so that you can also get notification of the live streams way earlier than now. I just made the announcement yesterday. And it's frustrating is if YouTube doesn't deliver them right away. If you want to make sure that YouTube delivers them, although I have heard stories that it's not always the case, hit the bell icon and then then you get a menu and you can make selections where you want to have the notifications of the videos and I think also of the live streams. And normally YouTube should send you on the second actually a notification. Okay, John said, okay, no, Ratislav. I missed a few of you and let's just take some time to go to your chats here. And it's skipping. Sarah's watching and practicing at the same time. Wow, that's great. I wouldn't know if I would be able to, but Tom says no one ever complained about speeding up. All seems to be irritated that they never slow down. Well, that's the third spreadsheet. Thank you for reminding me indirectly. The third spreadsheet will be 19th century quotes from people, diaries, books, whatever, description, but original ones, or schools, or just writings about music, where people talk about tempo and the evolution, because you would be surprised how often you read a direct comment on the performance practice of that time compared to what the author is used to hear when he was younger. And it's often, I would say 95% in the 19th century, always complaining the new generations of playing too fast, which is strange because if you then see that the reason why we still are in mainstream performances, and it starts to happen in Bach as well, and it's regrettable, to speed up those things even more and trying to reach even higher tempi is because of the metronome numbers. If we wouldn't have metronome numbers at all, there would be not a single indication to play those works so fast. But the contradiction is that the same people who gave those metronome numbers, I'm talking in general now, complained about the speeding up performances of the new generation. So how is that matchable, so to say? Moschles, Czerny, we have some videos that we will reshoot because I can do it better. Adolf Bernhard Marx, who says from sonatas, for instance, of the Waldstein, well, people are playing that way too fast. And I know, he says, it's easy for an accomplished pianist to play it in the double speed as necessary. I mean, not even this debating the metronome number that's giving. So that's weird. That's an interesting idea. John says this is kind of Haydn sonata. Yes. Yeah, probably, yeah. A little bit too more drama. Haydn is always a little bit reserved, I think, in his way of writing. Kenneth, is it possible the Largo in the first movement is indicative of prelude? Yeah, I think so. Though it's strange that both Marshallus and Czerny gives a metronome number for the Largo, which I would say, well, why even bother? Because it's a kind of opening statement. You just lay the it's like a recitativo in an opera of Monteverdi or a Bach cantata, and then the singer starts his thing to what he has to do. Here also, you make a mood, you make an atmosphere. Okay, and then starts a story. Beethoven repeats that, which is turns it into a very expressive element. Hi, when will you record Bach's Little Preludes or Beethoven is your first priority now? You're on my mind because you've asked me that for a long time, and I will do that. But there's so much on my list now. And again, it's the pianoforte who came here that takes a lot of my time now, making it more difficult to make new recordings for you. Certainly because Mr. Frenzel doesn't want to behave with his temperament and his tuning. But once everything is settled, I will figure out how to make more music productions. I think that's the focus of the channel, should be more on music. We will have theory, we'll have videos on tempo. I will share that. Some large videos, 1 or 2 a month, and some snapshots more in between. We'll have to choose what we want to do, and that's difficult at the moment. And the channel is not self-sustaining enough to just ask for someone to make the editing of the video. That's a very costly thing to do. Also difficult because it's on music and so on. So we'll have to choose, but there's so much for Bach, CPE Bach waiting. And yeah, again, once the studio is there, I hope to come to a more easy way of producing. That's the thing. Just looking on my piano now, I spent 1 hour preparing this live stream because also I wanted to have those microphones, don't know if you see them, in a kind of nice position for the pianoforte to record it later this week. So I tried to do some work that I could benefit from later, but then the microphones are away from the clavichord and it's too small here as a space to have, you know what I mean. So I don't forget about your questions also on the applicatio. I think it was you who asked me that months ago. Then John says his nocturnes. I will make some recordings of the nocturnes and I will come up with some nice stories with the nocturnes, also tempo relation related. So that will be probably one of my last Chopin recordings. I know I've said it before, but Chopin's so close to me, so yeah. Anyway, there skips my chat again. I'm sorry if it takes some time to go through your chat. I want to make sure that everyone who leaves something. Okay, John, Opus 49. Yes, those two are sonatinas in Beethoven's mind, and they are today sonatas, but that's a small difference. Okay. Shirgi, oh, kind greetings to all. Thanks. Always nice reading you. Kenneth, Jonathan. Okay. Yeah, Haydn was Beethoven's teacher. And I always wonder, if you go to his Opus 2, those 3 sonatas, if you just think about it, that they were dedicated to Haydn, and Haydn received them, and he has played them, of course he has. So what was he thinking? Because they are so new. Jason, Women Czerny's Preludes and Fugues. He has a piece that has repeated notes at 132 for the 5th finger of the right hand. Is this possible on the pianoforte? Well, it depends on how fast. So the pianoforte has a lighter action than the Erard. The Erard has a lighter action than the Steinway. that's for sure, though it's not in the bass. I'll make a video on how heavy it actually is. But so if you play a scale, it's basically not so difficult, but also not more easier than on the ERR. The repeated, so the fact that, other than that, I would say this is a rather slow action. The hammerhead has a direct translation of what your finger is doing, more direct than even the ERR, but you need to come up really on top. This is not enough. You have to go really up. This is not working. And repeated notes are difficult because you will miss often repeated notes. So fifth finger, you see? You miss some. You really have to come up. We will also make a video that's, I mean, there are a lot of videos I have to shoot, but this is an interesting one to count how much repeated notes are possible on this piano. And there are some videos on YouTube that are really interesting on this. So also that is an interesting correlation because a lot of Czerny pieces will become impossible then. Okay, theoretically musical. Is it possible to play dynamics on a harpsichord? Need to know. So a crescendo and a baroque piece for harpsichord need to know what to do. So if you saw crescendo and a baroque piece, my guess is you have an addition that you want to check your addition, because to my knowledge it's not indicated. Not saying that there are no crescendos and decrescendos in baroque music. That's the reason why the clavichord was there. But on a harpsichord you cannot do that. You can make some suggestions, but that's all you can do. Okay, this piece of Jason was mentioning is prelude from his Opus 400. Then on Strutter, I have to watch it. 18:20, so it's 6:20, that's 10 minutes, and then my kids need to have some food, I think. On Strutter, I watched your two Czerny pieces, Opus 822, and then I decided to transcribe the entire book in my other channel, because again, no one knows those great pieces. That's true, and there are really great pieces. By the way, also Clementi, just go to Grades ad Parnassum. Beautiful fugues. Playing a lot of Clementi actually now. Sure, Gio, I'm interested on tempo ordinario. It seems more important than the double beat debate. It's the basis of everything. I have made a video on tempo ordinario a few weeks or months ago. Just type tempo ordinario in on YouTube and you'll find it. And it is often the missing element in the debate. And the reason is not so difficult to guess. It's not everyone is familiar with it. I was so lucky to have had lessons from Jacques van Ootmessen, who was one of the best teachers and one of the major forces and voices in the organ world, early music organ world, so to say. After he died a few years ago, I was invited by his widow to go on his study room and with some other students of his and decide what to do with this enormous library, and just being able to take the books of your former teacher was very touching, but only then realizing what an enormous knowledge he had that he just passed on us. And the tempo ordinario, basically 1 quarter note 60 for 1 second, that's if you start from that, it makes all the metronome numbers, who in my opinion are double beat, the ones that are in double beat, in my opinion, makes them impossible to understand. Czerny's tempo ordinario or some metronome schemes, tempo ordinario are exactly double. So quarter note 120. I think it's a very good suggestion, and many of you have given that to me. And that's what I will do in the future. Focusing on tempo research will also be focusing on notation more. Because there are some difficulties in double beat that also there I will make some videos, because I think we need to share that. One of them is the reference to the minute. If you see quarter note 60, I mean, yeah, for instance, the means description is often there at 60 quarter notes in a minute. That's true, yeah, but basically what to do about it. So Lorenz Guardian, who is doing more research than I'm doing, obviously, he is spending time on this and has found, I think, over 40 sources that describes the second pendulum, not going into too much detail, so 1 second to the right, 1 second to the left, basically 2 seconds as 1 second. It's strange, starts with Mersenne. So there must have been a kind of difference between time measurement in the sense of duration and time measurement in the sense of what the French say mesure, so to make a measurement out of it. And you kind of see this pattern also when people are describing a duration of a piece. Oftentimes that leads to double beat, not always. But the description of the, like for instance Milchmeyer in his pianoforte school, he gives the duration, quote unquote duration, I don't know, of pieces in his pianoforte school. It's aimed at beginning pianists in tempi that's ridiculous. So, but yeah, that puzzles us as well. So I think we have to come to a kind of more open debate where it's not about being right or wrong. It's about, as I've always said, but again, maybe being pushed a little bit too much into the defensive position, but I want to come out of that, and so also happy to have made that video on piano pattern. We will have some a conversation, so I'm happy with that. So coming out of this defensive, just open this and learn to ask the questions, because that's the most important thing. And at the end, of course, realizing and not forgetting that the end result is music, and the majority, I think, of listeners are interested in this, but not really focused on it. They just want to hear music, and I think often happy to hear something new. But again, that's a refocus on the channel that we have to do, I think. Sarah asked, why did Rachmaninoff play Chopin's single beat? I don't know if he did. They played very fast, that's for sure. Yeah, we'll come back on that in some videos in soon. They're actually scheduled. So stay tuned for that. It's too long for this live stream, but it's interesting. It's really interesting, but it's the story I'm going to bring. Again, opening way more questions than answers. Okay, the Ali Bean, I've been playing the piano all my life, but I've just convinced the local vicar to let me use that organ at the local church. Do you have any recommendations of where I should begin? Yeah, that's the difficult question. If you're just looking for music that's sounds nice on an organ, it's not too difficult to play, go for some Sweelinck, I would say. Some earlier music. Or if you want to have romantic music, go to, that's a nice thing. César Franck made these pieces for harmonium. Pièce, the title escapes me. I have them upstairs. They're not too difficult. They're 2 books. Beautiful pieces. Really beautiful pieces. Hello, Fred. Nice to have you here on the end of the live stream. Elijah, it would be awesome if you could dig into a pretty good bio on Amédée Miro. Only thing I know is that he was a friend of Chopin. Okay, I didn't know the name even. So I will make a note of that. Jason Neers, does Jacques have any organ books where would you recommend to start learning pedal technique? Any good books? Also, what were Jacques' thoughts on double beat? Yeah, to start with the latter question, of course, I was much inspired by Jacques on this. He never pushed me to go too deeply into this matter in conservatory. I think I told that in one of the previous videos when I was working here outside. But yeah, he was a double beat believer, so to say, though not really diving too deep in that. He made some recordings for-handed with his friend and teacher Hans van Nieuwkoop on organ, which if you find the CD or the disc, you have to buy it. It's really beautiful. And there you have the G minor symphony. I don't think really in double beat, but much slower than today. It's just gorgeous. He has, by the way, a book called Organ Technique, and maybe it's in Dutch only. No, it's in English. Otherwise, you send me an email. I will send a link to you. That's a perfect book to start. Yeah, theoretically music. He checked his book. It said arranged for piano. Then how to use dynamics on a harpsichord, that's difficult. You have to make agogic accents. So suggesting an accent with timing is really difficult. Go to Gustav Leonard's recording. He was a master in this. KMG24 managed to obtain a copy of Swilling's organ music by Jacques on vinyl. A fantastic recording, yes, and it's an old one. I think I shared that disc on my channel. L'Organiste, Martin says, yes, that's the book of César Franck. Really nice. Okay, guys. So, I thank you all for being here, practicing a little bit here. And if you think on a format on live streams, on practicing sessions that you would like to see me doing, just leave me a comment in a video. I normally see all the comments you make. Not always have time to reply extensively on them, but I read them. So, and open for suggestions. As I said, that Bach G-sharp minor video that I've uploaded, where I practice from scratch writing my fingerings, I thought it was so boring. Anya was here when I recorded. She said, well, it might be still interesting, but actually you enjoyed it so much, it outperforms many other videos. So if you'd like to have me make those videos, I'm more than happy to do so. It's not only, you know, sharing that with you is great for me as well, because I'm focused way more when that camera is turned on than when it's not. So I switch off the phone, every phone. Will not have conversations with my wife even, which is sometimes I have to plan it very carefully, but no, just saying that hour I'm just practicing. So it's no waste of time for me to do that. And if you are happy with that, I'm more than happy to share them more. Okay, as for now, I thank you for watching. Again, if you haven't subscribed, I think you all have, but if you haven't, hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon, because normally YouTube should send you a notification for the live streams if we have no time to announce it more in advance. But again, we will make a schedule as soon as I land with my 2 feet back on earth. It's a very busy time now. And if you would consider to go over to the Patreon page and to make us reach 100 patrons, I'm thinking on what to do. Doing something special, then that would be, I mean, mind-blowing if 100 people would support the channel. We are with 86 or 87 now, which already is unbelievable. But if you do that, I appreciate that, of course, enormously. So, and for now, hope you have a nice evening, midday, or just morning, depending on the place on this planet where you live, and hope to see you soon again. Bye.